right, guys, welcome to the CrossFit Grandview podcast. Today is, I believe it's podcast number 33, and today we're going to talk about auto-regulation. So I got this idea, I'm on a newsletter Marcus Philly sends around, and he discussed the topic of auto-regulation and how it was one of the key things to staying fit for life. So I brought Dan in here because Dan actually, I've noticed over probably the last 5 or 6 years, is one of the best athletes I've seen at auto-regulating himself, like knowing when to push hard. Something is in his wheelhouse. He's gonna absolutely crush it, and then other days just taking a step back if he's not feeling great. You know, he's had some knee issues. Like, hey, I'm not gonna do tons of burpee box jump over workouts. I'm gonna kind of keep that in my back pocket for if I have to do it, you know.
One open workout every 4 years.
Exactly, and then he just doesn't do those. So, and he stays healthy and he works out, you know, 6 days a week, every week, and crushes it. And I've been not as good at that at certain points, and that's why, you know, I wanted to bring him in. So basically what auto-regulation is, it's knowing your body and sensing stress enough to be able to push hard when it's there and then pull back accordingly. We're all born with this trait in some way. I mean, like, you know, if you're a little kid and you feel tired and, you know, someone's trying to push you to do something, you know, you'll usually complain or whine. Like, you're born with this trait. You know, once we dive deep into CrossFit, and I actually was better at this, I think, before I got into CrossFit, and then I started to see results. I wanted to stick to a program, and I wanted to keep up with people who, you know, maybe I was training with, and I sort of started to just turn this off, and that's when I think I really started to run into, like, injuries and some things like that after a few years of getting into some CrossFit. And, you know, once you're competitive, like I was kind of competitive in CrossFit for a little while early on, competitive-ish. And then once that kind of ended, and I didn't have a lot of stress outside, I had new stress and inputs kind of coming in to my life. And once that happened, actually the injuries jumped up right after I was done because I put all my energy and focus into CrossFit training for a few years. And then as my business started to take off, I got married, started having kids, I tried to keep up that level of training and all that training stress while my life stress went up. And that's when I started to kind of run into some problems. And that's what we're really going to discuss here today. So Dan, I don't know if you had some issues like similar. You found a spot, like you can like go back to a place like when in your training where you're like, okay, I need to make some adjustments, maybe like, you know, lifting faster, stronger, more explosively wasn't always like the best.
Yeah, there was just a few years ago, I was doing all the level 2 stuff and watching dudes squat 405, and I'm not as big as some of them, so trying to like always chase those numbers just beat my already not so great right knee up. Like I've had an ACL surgery, a meniscus surgery, so just wear and tear on top of that, and then trying to like push weights all the time. And then one day I think I was doing air squats like Cindy or something, and it just like tripled in size, and I was like, I should probably stop squatting. And I didn't squat for like 6 months, worked around it, did like deadlifts, hamstring stuff, and then it just started feeling a little bit better over time, and I could kind of push squats. But instead of going like 85, 90, 95% double singles, whatever, it's like 70% for 5 to 10. It's like I can like do that kind of stuff. Diving under heavy squat cleans isn't always a good idea. Like twice a month I can like do a heavy single kind of thing. And other than that, it's like, what's the point?
Yep.
You know, so like it's just cutting stuff out but not fully cutting it out, I guess.
Yeah, so still touching it and finding like what kind of volume works for your body.
Yeah.
And
yep.
What I really noticed with you is actually you had some addition by subtraction, like so things you were good at, you doubled down on some of those things, and then you took out some of the things you weren't as good at or not as good at. Just your body just didn't like to do that over and over again. And I mean, a great example is like this past year, you probably had one of your top 1 or 2 open performances that you've ever had.
Yeah,
you were 4th in the gym overall.
Yeah.
With some really young competitive guys who really get after it, and I mean that's got to be. I mean, as far as how you stacked up in that group, like one of the best you've ever done.
Yeah, that was a surprise because, I mean, like, again, coming into this, like 3 months leading up to it, my knee felt good. So, like, the group I work out with, we were pushing some squats but not getting, like, super crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept the pull-up stuff going, and that really helped this year, too, obviously, because I was that big, was it 21.3 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot. But, yeah, it was a surprising year from no rowing or wall ball, so that helped.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's cool to see you listen to your body, know when to, like, pull back, when to push things.
Yep.
Things to avoid or just, like, scale in a way, where it's not, like, and it's not damaging your ego anymore, whereas, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you're like, hey, I need to always be working on my back squat or whatever it is to keep up with it, or like I have to force myself through, these box jumps and work on rebounding. And luckily, CrossFit kind of took that out as like a big
the
thing.
burpee kind of helps that. You can like cushion the blow a little bit with it now, yeah.
Because I remember, every year in the Open, they seemed to have like a workout that was primarily like, I don't know, 150 rebounding box jumps.
Up and down.
And that probably wasn't
not good.
Phenomenal on the knee.
Yeah, the one year I didn't even do the Open because leading up to it, I did a bunch of box jumps because I should probably get this conditioning up, and it just like took me out of it. So like I didn't even sign up in like 16 or something. Like
I remember that. Yeah, your knee was you're just like I'm not.
Yeah, I'm like limping as I walk around the gym, which was a good look for everybody.
yeah. I mean, and that we're here like at the end of the day, like competing is fun.
Yeah.
For guys like me and you, we're trying to just. We're competitive. Yep. Both of us are competitive, like, and that's part of what makes this a challenge for me, because I like to do well in my class, or I want to
shit talking my friends takes me a long way.
Yeah, I want to do good and certain things that I've become used to being good at, and then it gets tough to shut that voice down. Like, okay, I'm not feeling my best today. I need to maybe pull back on this workout, and it's only a day, and then the next day or 2 days later, you're rocking and rolling rather than something that, sets you back 2-3 months, or, you lose a season of the Open or something to it. So I wrote some notes down. I'll kind of refer back to my sheet here. So when you make major progress in the gym, it's when we are able to properly balance stress. So stress can be a lot of things. Stress can be your workout. That's part of your stress, and your recovery. So too much stress without enough recovery, you're going to see a decline in your results. So I remember running into this, especially like when I would try and keep up with, say, like Graham or guys like that back in the early days when I was competitive. I figured out pretty quick, like, I can't handle the same stress load as these guys who can do these marathon workouts with a ton of weightlifting volume. It was just like that. I had to be a little more calculated with what I did. That was not going to work with me. So too much stress without enough recovery. Not enough stress, so not enough training in this instance with adequate, and then you have plenty of recovery, you're just not going to get anywhere. And that's honestly, a lot of this podcast isn't for people who are having trouble getting to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. That's not exactly what we're talking about. So that's probably 90% of the population's issue is like, they're working out once or twice a week. They're not getting enough stress. They're getting plenty of recovery. And then the sweet spot in what we're talking about is getting enough stress with just enough recovery. And that's when you start to see that incremental growth and progress. And I really, personally, I can think back on a time, it was about 3 years ago. I had about 2 years where I had it pretty nailed for myself. And I wasn't maybe at my peak of competing, but I had about 2 years where I was in a really good groove. I didn't miss a week of like 5 days a week of like some solid CrossFit. I was sleeping well. I had a nice little rhythm and routine going, and then certain things will always creep in there. And then I tried to keep that training up with other stress inputs. And that's when, it's funny, that's when the wheels start to fall off a little bit. And I've had to kind of recalibrate here this last, 6 months to a year. I'm back on track, but you always find yourself kind of in those things. Like you had a baby in the last 2 years. So
Yep.
you know how like you then have to, like, that is energy that, like, when you were going home, you used to go home and you got to chill for a while,
Maybe take a 2-hour nap in the middle of the afternoon, something like that. Not so much now.
When that goes away, that's a lot of like recovery
Yeah,
time.
right?
Yeah. But you figured, so you probably get to bed now. You're more intent on when Harper's sleeping. Do you like, okay, my ass is going to bed, right?
Yeah, she's in bed by like 8, hopefully. And I'm in bed by like 8:30 at the latest. Yeah.
Whereas before you might have found yourself like staying up a little later because you knew you had that nap the next day kind of coming up.
Yeah, it didn't bother. I didn't really care about when I went to sleep. It was just like, oh, I'm kind of getting groggy. I'll go to sleep now. Or now I'm like, I'm gonna like lay in bed and like force my eyes to close, and then it's like out right away. Yep. So it's like, yeah, a little different now.
And for those of you guys who are watching, Dan does our early classes that start at 5:30. But he's not getting up and just barely making it there. He does his full training before the 5:30 a.m. class, and he's got to drive in. Yep. So he's getting up in the middle of the night, basically.
Yeah, like 2:30. Yep.
So you can talk trash to Jocko Wilnick. Like,
that's right.
What is he? He has like what, like a 4 a.m.
4
like
or 4:30. Yeah.
Something like that on his phone. You just, every time he posts that on his Instagram, you need to post your like.
Just this.
Yeah, it's like 2:10.
Where are you at, Jocko?
Mark, who is it? Mark Wahlberg has a similar type thing too, where he like cryo freezes his body, and he's mitigating all these stress factors with like cryos and things like that. We won't dive too much into that. I've talked about that on another podcast.
Yeah.
But there's some things you can do to also mitigate some of these factors. So what we're going to talk about here is there's 2 different approaches you can take to balancing your stress and then your training as well. So one is the pro athlete mentality. So that's basically putting your sport or training above all else. We may have, and there's a spectrum to this. And, we have a few athletes maybe at our gym who are able to, put a lot of their time and energy into this. And we've had some in the past who are really able to dive into it, more than others. My former partner Graham, he would like gearing up to the games. He would basically put everything he had into that, and he had to. That was part of what it took to be at that level. And some examples of this are just eating perfectly, dialing in your diet or having a coach dialing your diet every meal, including like almost all weekend. Getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night with like minimal disturbances. Relationships, oftentimes not really having a lot of those outside of training partners and coaches, and possibly not even having like a spouse or a girlfriend. I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, I think like none of the individual games competitors had kids. None of them. There was like not one that did, or maybe one did.
So maybe one, but not.
Yeah, it wasn't many, Just shows you what it takes to, like, having a child, like, basically takes you out of the running to do that. Which even in most pro sports isn't the case.
Yeah.
And then work. So having a job, maybe not having a job outside of your sport. So it's just your sport. Or minimizing that work stress to like next to nothing. A lot of times that's where you see most of the people who are really good at the masters level, the games competitors, they're not fully immersed in 8 to 10 hour work days. They're guys who had like they built a company and they made money and they essentially don't work anymore. Yeah. And then they can it's like they have a second life. They can go back to being an athlete and just nerding out on CrossFit all day. And then what we're really talking about is the second approach. It's just the real life mentality of this auto-regulation. So we're all going to have different stress inputs and things. So it's whether it's work or relationships, kids, sleep, having things you like outside that might even be conflicting interests. Like if your favorite thing in the world to do is going golfing with your buddies on Sunday and drinking, 6 beers, it's not conducive to optimal fitness, but that might be your favorite thing to do in life, and you might have to just build that into your training plan,
Monday's a rest day after that, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. And I do some individual design with some guys who, one of which Monday is their rest day because they do a golf league. It's like you don't want to jack a bunch of deadlifts up and then try and swing like a golf club. Yeah. You were going to do that the day after that. So one thing to think about is sustaining for the long game. So when you're just approaching workouts, it's running races, especially on certain days, at a sustainable pace. So it's finding think about a race pace or a run pace. You are going at it at, let's say, 85, 90%. 4 out of 5 days a week. And you want to think kind of I love the example of if you watch Rich Froning compete, especially when he's an individual. It's harder to tell now that he's on a team, but if you watch him compete, he's never frazzled or frantic. His eyes aren't darting all over the room looking at the other people. And if you ever see, we all know people who are in classes who when they work out, they're working out in this almost frantic, frazzled pace. Their eyeballs are going all over the room. They're twisting around, doing bloodied hand single toes to bar.
Singles.
With their eyes darting around, and it's they're just trying to win. Yeah. The class or whatever it is. But that's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. People who train like that, they don't typically last. You can do that for a year, maybe a couple of years, and then it's just not fun anymore.
Yes, it's not fun to redline and then have people beat you still.
Yeah, it's just not, and it's not a way to improve.
Right.
So at the end of the day, that is not. We're getting waved to by some people out here. At the end of the day, that's not a great way to train. No. So finding that sustainable pace. Number 2 is learning your gears. So a lot of people, especially in CrossFit, when we're just learning how to do it, we have one speed. So it's come out like a rocket, and then you fade off, and then you try and kind of hold on for dear life. People you'll see who normally do really well consistently, especially in things like open workouts and competitive workouts, they have a calculated speed that they're going at, and it's not normally jump out ahead of everyone and then just barely hang on for dear life.
Yeah, round 1's typically just slow and steady and just gradually speed it up as you go sort of thing.
Yeah, think about, you've ran a couple organized races, maybe not a ton of them, but none of the good runners go out like a rocket.
Yeah.
Just come out hot.
The first 400.
And then they're collapsing at the end of the workout, just barely hanging on. But so many people do that in CrossFit workouts. They come out red hot, and then they just fizzle off and they die and they fall over. Most people, if you go to 5Ks or marathons and things like that, they're actually sprinting at the finish, not falling apart and weaving side to side, which is quite the opposite of CrossFit workouts. And I think we could take something from that and learn learn your gears, learn how to pace, and you want to think things like negative splits. Like if I'm doing a workout that is 4 rounds, my first 2 rounds are similar, if not slower, than my last 2 rounds, if you run the race the right way. Changing the volume on the workout. So we talked about that earlier with regards to your squatting. Mm-hmm. So you're not doing, or when you started to run into some issues, you backed off of doing, small off squat programs and things like that. Yeah. Backing off the overall volume can definitely help you in the long game. So I think there's a time and a place for that. I think, some of these things aren't necessarily geared towards a guy who's 25 years old, has plenty of time to rest and recover and do. I think you need to try and figure out what you're capable of there. You still need to listen to your body, but I'm not trying to just tell everyone, hey, everybody needs to back off. That's not necessarily the case. Like, you've got a certain window where you're going to build most of your capacity in your training career and, take advantage of that window. But changing the volume can help. And I think what's hard when you're young, and what was really tough for me is being really strict on a program and then feeling not the best. And then just adhering to it, no matter what.
Then hitting 95% the next day anyway, even though you definitely shouldn't.
Yeah, just like, I'm going to make this happen.
Yep, yeah, I'm going to belt up and knee sleeve up and knee wrap up, and I'm going to do it, yeah.
And then your knees are clicking for 2 months after
6 years.
Exactly. And then know your intent. So what are we training for? So at the end of the day, if you're trying to train to just feel good, look good, feel strong, like for me, the injury I've been maybe kind of alluding to is this pec strain that I got a couple of years ago that I've re-injured a couple of times. And ring muscle-ups is probably my favorite move in CrossFit, one of the ones I was probably the best at. And trying to jump back into it over and over again too fast with too much volume set me back over the last 2 years, because now I'm working around the shoulder and this pec injury, and my intent really, I don't need to be able to rattle off 15 unbroken ring muscle-ups. I want to look good, feel good, and feel very confident and capable when I'm training and coaching people and be able to demo everything. So now I'm like, why was I doing that? There's no rush to get that capacity back. Let the thing heal, work around it, and now I feel really good. I could do almost everything. I'm just shelving that move until it feels solid again, and if it doesn't ever feel solid again, maybe I just do bar, so it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, and I had built that up in my head as it was. And then just skipping certain formats altogether, like you have with box jumps.
Yep.
That bothers you. You modify box jumps or you avoid the workouts that have those.
I'll just put a different movement in there.
Yep. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's like a kettlebell swing or a ball slam. Just open your hips up hard, but no knee impact.
Just not
Yep.
slamming down on your knee.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We have opposite things.
Box
jumps are fine. I love to jump. And then, your shoulders are rock solid and you like to do the muscle up. So we're avoiding kind of opposite things right now. And then, so a good example I think that I was going to get into is, so I got my second vaccine shot and we had, it's like push presses a few weeks ago we had in a workout. It was built to a heavy triple, and then we had a real intense Metcon of some sort afterwards. I didn't feel good, so I didn't, so all I did was the push press portion, and I worked up to a moderate triple, and that was my day of work. I was like, okay, that's all I should do today. Worked up to that. I was done. I was able to coach and stuff, and I felt great the next day. Whereas if I had melted my face off in that Metcon afterwards, you know, I would have been mentally foggy. I would have been high risk for injury. So I'm 39 years old and I'm starting to learn this skill.
Figuring it out, kind of.
Starting to just kind of figure it out. And that kind of takes me to, I just have, ego is really the thing I think that most of us have to get over when it comes to this. So, some of my ego was tied up in, say, something like a ring muscle up. Like, I loved that skill for me was better than 95% of the people in the gym. Like, that was something I felt like I could, like, almost show off with. Like, I can do these all day. I feel really good. I can do them when I'm tired. They look pretty. It's my cleanest looking move. And when that skill kind of got pulled from me through this injury, my ego got in the way, and I would try and jump into doing it too fast and reoccurring an injury. So losing that ego and not doing that, like you did with your jumps and your knees, look at what it's done for your training since.
Yeah.
Awesome longevity, and then you kind of double down on your strengths, and, you know, you did over 100 pull-ups in a row and all that. Things you wouldn't have done.
Definitely.
You know, you wouldn't have done that if you were still chasing a 400-pound back squat.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's just something you wouldn't have done. So I think we got to take the silver lining, pull the ego out of it, and then, you know, really use that, like, think, like, am I doing this because it's my ego talking, or is this what's the smart thing to do? And then the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about with this was just some, like, actionable things, because we're talking about this, and so you have this maybe in your head, but there are some, like, actionable ways and some things that can help you auto-regulate. I took a CrossFit Games competition seminar. It was part of I don't even think they offer it anymore through CrossFit, but it was a really cool seminar. Matt Chan and Chris Spieler taught it, and they were still competing as individuals then. And this was pre-Whoop, and they came up with, it was 10 things to track. So you track your resting heart rate in the morning, first thing, and you look for a plus or minus 5% difference. So you can check your heart rate here for 15 seconds, then you just times that by 4, and that's your, you know, your resting heart rate. And if that's off, if it's like your heart rate's like boom, 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 when you wake up in the morning, it's probably not the best day to go, like, do Fran.
Yeah.
You know, weight plus or minus 2%. So if you happen to wake up one day and you're like, man, I just gained 5-6 pounds last night, or I lost 5 or 6 pounds, that's another indicator that maybe, you know, you shouldn't push super hard. You're in shade, if you've got some, like, rhabdo-P going on, something to maybe take note of. Like,
drink some water.
Yeah, what happened? Just your sleep hours, your sleep quality, appetite. If you wake up and you put your breakfast down, this is how I always know I'm sick a lot of times. I remember if I put my breakfast down and I just, like, look at it, I'm normally right on it. I'm like, that's not going to be a good training day.
No.
And you might, it's like, that day might go real sideways on you just in general.
Yeah.
Muscle soreness. So if you're just, again, like, completely have DOMs and your triceps and all that,
like hurts to touch kind of soreness.
Not the day to, like, try and hit the PR on the bench, which can happen sometimes in CrossFit because moves will sometimes conflict. Like, say you do a ton of shoulder to overhead, and then 2 days later, you know, your triceps are lit from that, and then, you know, push-ups or bench come into play. You might want to be cautious there. Your mood, you're in an awful mood and you can't figure out why. That's something to take note of. Immune system status, if you're snotty and feeling like crap. And then your previous day's performance too. So always take note of that. If you had a rough training day the day before and you were pushing it really hard, you might want to back off that following day. Look kind of objectively at your readiness state. Have you ever messed with one of those? I haven't either. So this is not a great topic for me to dive into.
Yeah.
I've just got people like telling me about it, and it sounds really interesting and cool, but it's, for where I'm at in my training, I don't know if I need a $35 a month gadget to like tell me when to back off and do things yet. If I have something I'm training for, I might kind of dive into that, like, okay, hey, I'm getting ready for a competition. Like, all right, maybe I'll do a whoop thing. Sounds really cool, and it's something I might end up diving into because I like to nerd out on things like that, but right now, not there. And then the last thing is just reviewing your performance without judgment. Are you capturing the intent of the workout? Did you give your best effort for the day that you should have that day? Like, you're going to have workouts like, it's funny because don't look so much, I think, at how you're stacking up against the class as how you did for you that day. I'll have workouts where I have, honestly, a pretty shit performance, and it stacks up well on maybe the leaderboard because the movements were maybe in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget why they're doing it. It's not for Wattify or whatever the whiteboard is. It's like, did you get out of breath? Did you get sweaty and gross? Did you move today? Yes. Like, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
It's not, did you beat Austin, who's a gorilla, in the workout with sled drags? You probably did.
Yeah, and then try and take note of like, okay, what could I do better next time? And a lot of times when we're talking about this pacing stuff and all that, again, I like to use the analogy of addition by subtraction, because a lot of times you will do better sometimes in workouts with, say you're rowing or something, you pull 5 to 10 seconds off your split time, you jump off the rower, you're going to feel fresher. It's like going harder and faster all the time isn't always going to have the best net result. So, taking that from your workout as well. And then just thinking of every training session as a chance to learn. And then use the tests when they're there for that. So, if you have like a race or an event, like that's the time to just, let her rip. Use the training sessions for what they are, training sessions. You shouldn't push, more than probably one a week at that complete 100% red line level. That's about what you want to do, unless you're, maybe gearing up for a competition. Maybe you do 2 of those. But you got to be careful with that.
Say with days between them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that kind of wraps that up. I have just a couple quick announcements. And I try and put these at the end so I don't date these podcasts. So if you're listening to this a year from now, you're not like, oh, have to listen to the pool party announcement and stuff like that. June 19th, we're going to have our pool party at Hoofhearted/Go Fitness. I think they kind of share this pool area. It's going to be 1 to 5. Now, the thing with it this year is we're going to let 20 people in every hour for 3 hours, and then you can stay for 3 hours. And we're going to take care of all the food and drinks. Still have some COVID and capacity restrictions. So you'll get to hang out and party pretty much as long as you want to once you're in there. But what we're going to do, and Monday we'll release it. You'll just sign up for it like a class on Wattify. And all we ask is if you're not going to show up, pull your name off there so someone else can get in. Because it also costs us money too. Because we have to pay for each person to get in. So just make sure you sign up, and then also if you're not going to come, pull your name off so someone else can get in, because we only have spots for 60 people, and I want anyone who wants to come, I want them to be able to go. So if you're not sure if you're going to go, maybe wait to sign up, and then if you find out last minute you can't, pull the name off. New gym, construction started. They're painting, doing carpet. I I don't have a timeline yet, so when I get that, I'm going to give it to you guys. I get asked, I don't know, about 20 times a day what the date is or when's our set opening date, and, you know, I'd love to be able to, like, say now, but we have this, it's a massive upfit of this building. We're still waiting on some, like, electrical permitting and things like that. Just know that things are underway now, and it's about to really start rolling. I'll try and document some of that process as well with Mike once we start framing things out and hanging lights and all the fun stuff there. And then preview for the next podcast, I'm going to bring Scott in here, and we're going to talk about level 2 and how we're going to expand that program into some evening classes. And we're going to start that after they get back from Vegas from the semifinal, and then just give more opportunities for people who want to do the competition training to do that in a group. So I'm really excited for that. Since the pandemic, we just have that one time a day, and we're going to expand that into multiple times a day, get some small groups going throughout the day and all training and pushing together. So looking forward to that. We'll see you guys next time.